welcome to the Crash Course of the evening. Come to this thing because a super talented individual, improv, guru, just a fly guru. Let's make some noise for Philippe Resolve.
So I'm not a rapper. There was one exception though. I was like, ladies and gents, I bid you all good morning. I'm Wolf Blitzer the way I'm reporting. Greener than Portland, let's start recording. I'm showing up at your door like a Mormon. Ask about me on Yahoo Answers. I'm in the city, famous for Marshall Mathers every day. I'm pulling out my camera, but I'm Jackson Pollock with lyrical splatter. It was a chilly November morning in Detroit, and I dropped those bars at a carpet cleaner's parking lot in Detroit. I had to. I was on 8 Mile Road. And I had to ask myself, how did I wind up in these situations? Oddly enough, this particular idea might have come from my uncle's funeral, of all places. Indirectly. But it was February of my senior year of college where he shared his diagnosis with the family, and he would pass away 6 months later. And when I attended his funeral just weeks after my graduation, it was a bit of a system shock. Now, he wasn't an uncle I was especially close to. I'm from a very large family. I'm Filipino, so I have islands full of aunties and uncles. But he was family. He was a familiar face at the Thanksgiving table, sitting in between the turkey on one end and the fried bungus milkfish on the other end to accommodate all tastes. And seeing his open casket was a shock. Seeing his face thinned out by months of unsuccessful cancer treatments and drained of its color, his body seemed so small and stiff, which was just completely inconsistent with my childhood memories of him. And now, my uncle's funeral and my own graduation, even though these are about as different as events come, they both seem to send me the same message, that time was speeding up. I know it's a common thing to feel like we're running out of time, like, can just get people to nod by saying, like, I can't believe it's already Saturday. I can't believe it's already November. I can't believe it's almost 2024. I can't believe I'm in my 30s. I can't believe, you know, there's this phenomenon that people talk about where time feels faster and faster the older you get. And that legitimately freaks me out. I'm like, I could live for 50 more years and it might feel like 2 weeks if that thing holds true. It's, and for me, it's always felt like time's moved even faster for me than from an average person. And sometimes I wonder if it's because I became pretty conscious of my own mortality at a young age. The very first funeral I actually remember attending was my own dad's, and I was only 5. My memories of him are few, but they instilled in me the reality of how fragile life can be. And so the end of college for me was very abrupt. It was like, wait, 4 years are done? Just like that? Already? And all these people, these friendships I formed, this community I found, we're all just about to go our separate ways? Like that? And so to me, time had always felt like this accelerating conveyor belt that moved faster and faster and brought me further and further away from people and places where I felt like I belonged, people and places that felt like home, people and places that I loved. And my uncle's funeral was another reminder of that. With thoughts like these very frequently in the back of my mind, I don't need too many reminders to carpe diem. Like, I know there's no time like the present. Okay, I have a built-in instinct to live like I'm dying. And to those who also live like you're running out of time, you realize that the bucket list is kind of sacred. And I don't just have a list, I have lists of lists. I made a list of legendary meals I want to eat before I die. You know that the world's rarest pasta is only made by like a handful of grannies in a remote village in Italy, and you have to like hike 20 miles on foot to get there. They're called the Threads of God. I found that out while making the list. When my wife and I first got married, I had us come up with 100 things we wanted to do in our first 1,000 days of marriage, but these lists are all just like spin-offs of the main bucket list, which took me a while to make. My first few tries were just lists of countries and cities. It was just like the index of an atlas. And I love to travel, but I felt like I had to be a little more creative than that. So after a few tries, I was able to come up with things like volunteer at a refugee camp, or go on a legitimate safari, or rap on 8 Mile Road. That's how I came up with those bars in Detroit. And now I not only had the motivation to suck the marrow out of life, But I also had a strategy, I had a game plan. I went on that safari. I got to see elephants take baths in the Kobe River. That was amazing. I got to visit a refugee camp in northern Thailand, share meals with people who spent their whole lives living there, and that was like so perspective forming. I got lost hiking in Morocco and got taken in by a family to eat dinner with them, actually to break the Ramadan fast, and that was like otherworldly. And to this day, whenever I hear stories on the news that break my heart, which is like always now, I chase them with these reminders of my trips. Because my in-person encounters show me that the world can be pretty horrifying sometimes, but the vast majority of people here are warm and hospitable and are doing their best. And this constant sense I have of how time is speeding away and taking me away from those I love, it kind of seems to stop whenever I'm off on an international adventure. Travel puts me in my flow state. It makes everything else move in slow motion. I can take in all of my surroundings like I'm just drinking them up. The regularity of cobblestone streets, the smells coming from a night market, the buzz of a crowd flooding into a cafe at 3 a.m. because it's the World Cup and that's just what you do. It's like every sense gets turned up to full volume. Within 1 week in a new country, I can feel like I'm living lifetimes. Perhaps this was my one antidote to the sense of time moving too fast. What if this is just this great irony where me staying still feels like sinking, and me in movement brings stillness? Maybe I found a pause button for life. Or maybe this is just escapism, because sometimes life makes you want to do that too. Like that time I had to watch my wife's health deteriorate. I saw her go from running a marathon a week before we graduated to 4 years later being hospitalized with a lung infection that sent her lung function down to 22%. And that brought a lot of unknown implications about our future. And a doctor tell us that jeopardized our chances of ever having kids, which was bucket list number 100 for me. That made me kind of realize that there is a bit of absurdity to these lists I made, right? Like surely something like being a dad is in a different weight class than trying the world's rarest pasta. And as I grappled with my wife's condition, time feeling fast again, or lack of success having a kid, and just the fragility of life, bucket lists started to feel kind of strange. One of the great ironies of a bucket list is we make them when we know that our lives are finite, right? But then when we start actually writing things down, we start to act like they're infinite. We start throwing on all 7 wonders of the world, all variations of the 7 wonders list, because no one can agree as to what they actually are. All 197 countries, and maybe we're kidding ourselves. Maybe we're just trying to give ourselves a sense of immortality during this exercise that's supposed to be all about mortality. We act like we can just do all these things if life is endless, but life has an end. And also as a beginning, one February morning a few years ago, we found out we were pregnant. And one October morning a few years ago, I found myself staring at 2 miracles. I sat next to the bassinet where my newborn son was taking his first nap. And the other miracle was on my phone. It was a press release about this new drug that went to market, which turned out to be a miracle drug that would treat the underlying cause of my wife's chronic lung infections. It was a breakthrough that likely added years, if not decades, to our time together. And up to that point, I always thought of time like a thief, something that just runs along at sonic speed, taking you away from the people and the places that feel like home. And I started to learn that it doesn't just take, sometimes it gives. I started to think of it like a song. One individual note, no matter what the note is, it's not a song. It's the progression from one note to another, and then another after that creates music. And I think it's a musician's words, the secret to life is to enjoy the passage of time. Thank you, James Taylor. Without the passage of time, I wouldn't have seen that journey from desperation to miracle that's my family's origin story. I wouldn't have seen that baby start taking his first steps, go from the caterpillar room to the butterfly room of his preschool, or go trick-or-treating as Miles Morales last Tuesday. And I wouldn't have seen him become a big brother to twins. Yeah, there's some things whose beauty can only be seen through the passage of time. There's also something about just sitting in a moment of it and just being there with the people around you, people you love. You know, my biggest fear used to be just being stuck in one place and having to stay put, and I'm still not great at it by any means, but there's nothing like having a pandemic lockdown overlap with your first year of parenthood to force you to learn it. And so the other week, my oldest asked me to play The Floor is Lava, and so we scattered towels and lids and toys all over the patio and just lost ourselves in trying to make it from one end to the couch on the other side. And as many bucket list items as I might do or might not ever get to, when it's all said and done, those are the kinds of moments that I'm going to want to bask in the most. I still haven't given up on the lists though. Last year I visited my 50th state. This year I got to give a TED Talk. I'm very slowly and kind of embarrassingly training for a marathon. I also love bringing the kids along for the adventures. By the time my twins turn 2, I can say that they've gone with us to Guatemala and Alaska and the Philippines, and I'm still thankful for my drive to go do things because it's given me so many stories to tell and so many of these memories. I've also learned that having good stories doesn't just come from a flurry of activities, but also the space to let them sink in, the space to reflect and appreciate, to wake up and do ordinary work that I really enjoy doing, helping rural communities restore their ecosystems, to indulge passions that don't require plane tickets, things like illustration or taking up improv. Yeah. Thanks, improv team. And to set up the best Floor is Lava course in the backyard of all time. Turns out there's a number of ways to make time stand still, and there's actually too many to list. I'm Philippe Lazaro, and this is my truth.
Everybody, that's Philippe Lazaro.
Thank you for sharing your truth.
All right, thank you. Show some love. Coming up, the performance set inspired by Philippe's story, very funny comedian. She's like a roast battle beast. She's like undefeated at the Comedy Store in LA. Let's show some love for Lucy Love.
You know how hard it is to do roast battles and not comment or try to watch the black people when a white woman's talking about her hair? And then Philippe comes up here and he's like, I'm not a rapper. I'm like, we know. You didn't have to tell us or do that rap. We appreciate it though. Thank you for sharing the truth. No, Philippe's actually a really cool guy. I follow him on Instagram, and it's literally just a page of what people wish their manifestations were. I encourage you to follow him. He's following his dreams, and it's beautiful. I accidentally brought my manifestation notebook, and for a second, I couldn't tell if it was my jokes or not. So, that's my life. I'm just gonna trust that this audience is also gonna let me share my truth because I'm also a parent. But I have a very different experience. Because I was 19 when I got my daughter. I am Mexican, so it's considered a geriatric pregnancy.